All right, thanks so much. And please, Denise.
Okay, I'm Denise Christie, producer of the Enduring Families Project. It's a theater project that brings to life the stories of 19th century African Americans that lived primarily in La Crosse and its surrounding area, but no story about 19th century African Americans would be complete without extending the umbrella to those African Americans who lived in Cheyenne Valley. And that's the focus of this program today. Due to some miscommunications, and I thought this one said, and I thought that one said, we will not be able, I can just briefly tell you about one of the participants in this, Dodie Whitaker, a resident of Viroqua, who portrays, this is Dodie, and Dodie portrays Burletta Walden Loving. The Waldens were a family, one of the families that were the original settlers in Cheyenne Valley. Burletta, who was portrayed by Dodie, migrated to La Crosse for a time. And then Burletta lives sometimes in Sparta, sometimes in Toma. But we do have a video about her, about Burletta Walden in our collection of videos. So I just wanted to let y'all see Dodie. And you think and like I said, this is miscommunication, but
Yeah, I apologize. And if my dad is a historian, he would have loved this. So, but unfortunately, I have to take him to the dentist. So I'm gonna do that.
so hopefully we'll still be going when you're able to come back and talk a little bit. So thank you for stopping by. The presentation today is going to focus on the Shivers brothers, Ashley and Thomas Shivers. Our theater project was kind of a bold move. We wanted to record the stories of, we have 12 stories in our project. And Dodie's is one, the Shivers brothers are 2 and 3. I did one about a lady, musician that lived in La Crosse. So we did focus on the La Crosse area. I mean, I didn't know there were all these people that lived in La Crosse, like 250 to 300 people at one time. But the lumber industry was the primary source of those of wealth, hiring those of not so wealthy to be servants. So a lot of these positions were serving positions. Okay, the Shivers are our focus today. Ashley Shivers was a barber, but he grew up in Cheyenne Valley. And then he and his second wife, Ellen Shivers, moved to La Crosse in the late 1890s. And then they set up a barber shop. She set up a cafe and they ran their business. One thing I wanted to say about the Shivers, we're going to be doing a presentation in La Crosse on May 6th. And it's going to be a walking tour through downtown La Crosse. And the people that reenact Ashley and Ellen Shivers are going to be giving their presentation right at the spot where Ashley Shivers had his barber shop. As it turns out, the woman who reenacts Ellen Shivers has a spa on 421 Main Street. Ashley Shivers' barbershop was on 411 Main Street. So it's right in the area. So that's going to be an added plus, that her shop is practically in the same area where Ashley Shivers' barbershop was. He helped his brother Thomas on their farm, but he didn't like being a farmer. He wanted to come to La Crosse, and he was an apprentice to Zachariah Moss, who, I'm married to a Moss, so these are all ancestors in law for me. So Zachariah Lewis Moss, who would have been the older Moss, served as his apprentice, and then he got his own barbershop. So this is the first video we're going to see, the video of Ashley and Ellen Shivers.
And I'm gonna pull that up here for us.
We filmed these in historical homes throughout the Crosse. So it may not be as authentic, but you know, it's not 18 exact, but you get a whiff for yesteryear, hopefully, from seeing these.
Let's see.
Oh, there's Michelle.
Yes.
Michelle is a descendant of the next Shivers brother that you're going to see.
Got a couple people on here. I just want to double check. Can you see the video screen at all on Zoom here?
Who are you talking to?
I can
Roberta.
only see the bottom of it. I can't, but
Okay.
Do you know how to do the share screen?
Yep, it's on share screen right now. I just, since it's two separate things with it being up here, it gets a little tricky. So we are just going to get this first.
Ashley Shivers. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. All right, I'm just gonna make sure that we've got this here. I'm sorry, everybody. I thought this was gonna be a little smoother. We'll start the video and I'll make sure it gets here.
Always fun.
Yeah, that is in Hillsboro, that historical marker.
Hello, everyone. We are the Shivers, Ashley and Ellen Shivers. We are glad you are here today. We would like to share some of our experiences with you. Our stories are great novels, really. We have very colorful experiences that are quite remarkable. We may not have even been together today, actually, wouldn't you say? Absolutely. To start with, I was born a slave in 1859 in Crockett County, Tennessee. My older brother Tom was born in 1857. After the Civil War, we stayed on the plantation for 3 additional years, and our mother. She soon passed away, and another woman came in. Her name is Joanna Jones. She was our adopted mother. Don't forget about Edmund. Edmund changed your life. Now, we wouldn't have even met if it wasn't for Edmund. I know. I'll get into that part. So anyways, around 1860, we met Edmund Smothers. He came to live near us after being purchased from the Smothers plantation in Haywood County, Tennessee. He ran away in 1863 and changed his last name to Harris to avoid being captured. He heard the Union was forming the colored regiments at the Fort Nelson in Woodford, Kentucky. He ran there to enlist. After the war, he came back to us. Edmund's first wife and 3 children had been sold into slavery, again in 1859, right before the Civil War. And Charlotte, she died in 1865, when her children were young. I know. It must have been very hard for him to lose track of his children. Edmund had been moved from the plantation in Haywood County to Crockett County in Tennessee. Ashley's stepbrothers and sisters found them after Edmund's death. They had kept their second slave owner's name because they never knew their father as a free man with a free name.
After the war, Edmund returned and started a new family with us.
He even had a daughter with his second wife. Her name was Mary.
During the war, he heard about the rich farmland in Wisconsin and about the free black settlers there. He felt like that's where our home should be. So we moved and headed for Wisconsin. Thomas, Mary, and I were kids at the time. We did not have any idea what to expect.
It took Ashley's family a very long time to get there. Almost 2 years, if not more. You ask why? They walked. They walked all the way from Tennessee to Wisconsin. Now, I suppose you stopped along the way, didn't you?
Absolutely. We had to rest and find work. Thomas wanted us to have our own farm in Wisconsin. So we continued to walk and walk.
My family, the Waldens, were already settled in Cheyenne Valley, just outside of Hillsboro in Vernon County. They came to Cheyenne Valley in 1854, along with several other families who were also people of color. Actually, they were tri-racial families, Black, white, and Native American. These families traveled all the way from North Carolina to Indiana to escape Black codes and the Fugitive Slave Act. My grandparents were Micaiah and Mourning Rebels. Even though they were free, they risked being sold into slavery if they stayed in North Carolina. Unfortunately, they faced the same problem when they got to Indiana, the dangers of being sold. So they, along with other families, had to leave again. Wisconsin was the ideal location for the move because the state had rejected the Fugitive Slave Act. They didn't have to leave anymore. They could settle without fear.
A year or so after we settled in the valley, other large families moved into the valley. One of them was the Bass family. It wasn't long before I started seeing Rebecca Bass. Her family also came from North Carolina and Georgia. We got married in 1882. The marriage lasted about 8 years, and we had 3 children together. But things didn't work out for us. We separated in 1890 and officially divorced in 1892.
That was a difficult time, not only because of the divorce, but Edmund died in 1881, right before they bought the farm.
Our stepmother died too. If that wasn't hard enough, we had to struggle to keep the farm. Edmund had willed the farm to Mary, but she almost lost it because the farm was heavy in debt. Thankfully, Tom paid the debts off and purchased the farm so it could stay in the family.
It's too bad Edmund didn't live longer, so he could see what became of his dream farm here.
Thomas would have made it been wonderful, and Edmund would have been proud.
Ashley didn't really like farming. Now, he helped maintain it. But you really didn't like it, did you?
But Thomas loved it. He had creative plans for the farm. He and his son Algie both loved farming. Thomas eventually ended up owning the largest Black-owned farm in Wisconsin, 250 acres. He sure knew a lot. Everyone in the valley looked up to him because he knew so much about farming. Even people from other parts of the state came to ask for his advice.
Algie Shivers, Thomas's son, was a very progressive architect. Algie was a pioneer in the building of round barns. He actually built most of the round barns in the southwestern Wisconsin. They were quite popular.
When I moved to the Crosse with my family, I worked as an apprentice at the Moss and Son barber shop. Zacharias Lewis Moss was my mentor. It was then that I realized I preferred being a barber to being a farmer. Once I finished my apprenticeship in 1890, Rebecca and I had our third child. But this didn't save our marriage though. Within a year of Claude's birth, we were divorced. I returned to the valley in the spring to help with the farming. And that's when I started to seek help.
My family, the Waldens, they were a strong family in the valley.
My divorce with Rebecca was finalized in 1892, and she soon remarried. Ellen and I were married in 1893. We decided to leave Cheyenne Valley permanently and move to the Crosse so I could start my own barbershop business here.
We made a good life for ourselves and our family. The barbershop business has been successful, thankfully. And we were able to have 5 children of our own between 1894 and 1906. But it wasn't all happiness. We lost our youngest, John Ashley, to pneumonia when he was just 8 months old. He's buried in Oak Grove Cemetery. In spite of our tragedy, the house was full of the sound of children, ours and Ashley's from his first marriage. They sometimes spent time with us too. We wanted to have a welcoming home for all the children as they were growing up.
For the most part, our barbershops have been our home. Can you imagine trying to raise children with men coming and going for haircuts and shaves? That's why we always try to own or rent large houses with a separate space between the living area and the barbershop. We were also able to open up a section of our home as boarding rooms for visitors and boarders.
Even though there were no legal restrictions about people of color staying in hotels or eating in restaurants, there was a way of people letting you know you were not welcome. That's why we opened up our house to people who needed a place to stay. After the children were older, we changed our living space. This happened around 1904.
I moved my barbershop to 411 Main Street, downtown. We continued to live on the north side at 415 Mill Road. Now it's called Copeland Avenue.
I opened a cafe in the space that had been used as a shop. It was a relief. There wasn't a steady stream of men in the house anymore. I was able to only serve breakfast and lunch to our boarders and visitors.
I didn't keep regular hours as a barber. When I had my shop in the house, I took care of customers whenever they came to the door. Of course, all that changed when I moved my shop out of the house.
You know, black barbers only cut and shaved white men's hair. Officially, that is.
White men didn't want to do business where black men had their beards or haircut or trim. They gave all kinds of excuses. But we all knew why. No one wanted to risk mixing other races.
Of course, they didn't want to cut women's hair either. Ashley and the other black barbers in town, they did service black customers though. After hours, in their own homes.
We had comfortable lives in the Crosse, so we were able to extend ourselves into the community.
I was active in the Home Literary and Debate Society. We were a group of women of color who helped other people of color in the community. We provided them with educational and social services, and we also offered help in finding housing in the area. We also organized the annual August Ball. We like to call it the Emancipation Ball. This was a very important event in our community. It was a celebration of the liberation of enslaved people in Haiti, and later in this country. This was held in Levy Park. Now you call it Riverside.
I made sure that they knew how to read and write so they could get their state barber license and create their own barbershop businesses.
Several children moved to Minneapolis and started families. Spencer continued the tradition of barbering and set up a shop there. Robert and Esther also moved to Minneapolis. Theodore continued the barber tradition in Sparta with another group of uncles in the Walden Barbershop. Ashley and Rebecca's children led productive lives also. In college, Claude was a graduate lab assistant. He also served in World War II. Oscar and Frank eventually moved to Madison and had service careers there. Nettie was a wonder. She lived in several states in the Midwest, finally settling in California. Ashley and Ellen were good parents and role models to their children and their extended family. They led very productive lives in La Crosse. They eventually moved to Madison, where they remained for the rest of their lives. Ashley passed away in 1937. Ellen passed away the following year, 1938. Ashley is buried in Forest Cemetery in Hillsboro, just outside Cheyenne Valley. Ellen was laid to rest near her family in Forest Burn Cemetery, also in Cheyenne Valley.
Just okay. The historian who put all of this together was Rebecca Mormon Krieger. She's the one that did all of the research and got all of she wrote the stories, and I kind of tweeted them so that the actors, so they would be palatable to the actors. And she got the visuals. So it was kind of a team effort between her getting the information and me getting it together to send out to the public. So the woman that portrayed Ellen Shivers, she's the one who has her spa right in the same area that Ashley Shivers had his barber shop. If you heard the video, his shop is 411 Main. Her spa is 421 Main. So that's going to be a nice treat when the two of them do their scene as the group is walking by that actual location. But that's the story of Ashley Shivers. And you're going to hear some overlap with the story of Tom Shivers, obviously, because they were brothers, they experienced similar things. So that's who Ashley and Ellen Shivers were. Fortunately, there are descendants of, as you heard, Ashley was married twice. The first wife was Rebecca Bass. The Bass family was another African-American family that lived in Cheyenne Valley. There are descendants of Ellen, his second wife, that was here. Those descendants are in Milwaukee. So they came, the one young lady came to a picnic, one of the reunions a few years ago. It was just before the pandemic. So I was fortunate enough to meet a descendant of Ashley and Ellen Shivers. And there have been some descendants of Ashley and Rebecca that I have met over the years also. But this is Ashley's story. Any questions or comments or anything?
I have some comments.
Who's that?
I'm a descendant of Ashley. Oscar was my grandfather.
Oh my goodness.
And one thing that my father told me is the two brothers did walk, but they also spent time on riverboats going up the Mississippi.
Okay.
And the other thing that I'd like to mention is Rebecca's name was Bass. That was her second husband. Her name actually was Rebecca Ann Peters, and she was from Ohio. Her father was John Oscar Peters, and he died in Ironton, Ohio. So my dad was named after Elga. His name was Algie, and he was Oscar's youngest son. And they lived at 11 South Murray in Madison.
Okay. And Oscar was one of Ashley's children, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Oscar was the little boy in the picture you showed.
Oh,
And
okay.
Oscar was also one of the young men that you showed. I don't know if you have the picture on the front porch where there was a little dog.
Okay,
That was my grandfather.
okay. Now, was she from Ellen or Rebecca? Was Oscar from Ellen or Rebecca?
Rebecca,
Okay,
Oscar, Nettie, and Claude.
okay,
With the
okay, I
three-
knew about.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
now I've got the branches. Okay,
those three were first. Rebecca later married a Bass, but she originally, her name was Peters. And I
I
have some information that said it was a contracted marriage. Now, I don't know where it was contracted, but her mother came with her. And her mother actually married the Bass. So
okay,
it wasn't Rebecca. That's why you might have gotten confused. Her mother actually married a Bass.
got it. Interesting. See, we can only research what's there, but there's always family stories that come out with all of this.
Yeah,
So,
I've spent a lot of time on Ancestry and I have a lot of pictures of the family. As a matter of fact, I found out one of Rebecca's family actually owned land in 1730 in Virginia and sold pork and cattle to the Revolution. So that family has been here a long time, many generations.
okay. All right. Well, thank you for
Yes.
telling us more about
Thank you.
Rebecca, because we kind of honed in more about Ellen, but it's nice to know about the other parts of the branch also.
Mm. Well, thank you.
Now, we are going to move on to the video about Shivers and his family. There's one famous son, a son that really established some notoriety, Algie, but there were several, he wasn't the only son, he wasn't the only child, there were others. And so this video will talk about them. And the other woman up there is a descendant of one of the other children. You'll hear the name Marvin. She's descended from Marvin.
All righty.
Thomas Shivers.
Gonna get cranked in my neck.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you've got to try Kachava. Kachava is the world's healthiest all-in-one meal shake.
I love the ads.
Books and magazines that you could find. I mean, he was the first to have a tractor at Cheyenne Valley.
It was yeah, that's not.
No wonder. Okay, interesting. We're gonna try that again. There we go.
I know this doesn't look like much. Just dirt, you might say. But to me, and others like me, it's so much more. People say they live on the land, but my people lived with the land. Like a sailor at sea. Here, man and land are one. Like the Bible says, we are all dust. My stepfather, Edmund Harris, gave me life for the land. In his early years, he was property owned by the Smothers family in Tennessee. First by the father, then the son. Edmund's first family consisted of his wife, Caroline, and their 3 children. They lived in Hayward County, Tennessee, until the mid-1850s. But with no regard for the family, his wife and children were sold to the Cook family in Kentucky. Edmund was moved to Crosse County, Tennessee, and sold from father to son. Edmund escaped from his mother's plantation in 1863 and came to us in Alamo, Tennessee. He married Joanna Jones, and the 2 of them had a daughter, Mary. My brother Ashley and I were already adopted by Joanna Jones. Edmund accepted us as family and treated us like his own sons. Black men were enlisted as Union soldiers at Camp Nelson, Kentucky. Edmund was determined to join, so he ran away to Kentucky, where he enlisted. After a year in the Army, he came home honorably discharged and with a new name. Edmund Harris was a free man. When the war ended, I was 8, Ashley was 10, and Mary was 5. The former owner sent me to school because he said I showed great potential. It was very rare for formerly enslaved people to receive any kind of education. I was grateful. What I learned helped me develop ideas I would later use when I had my own farm. In the meantime, my step-parents continued to work on the plantation after the war. They wanted to make the move north. They felt they needed to wait. They thought we were too young for such a long trip. Soon, though, it became impossible to stay in Tennessee. You see, after the Civil War, the U.S. military remained in the South to maintain order. This was the beginning of the Reconstruction era. But after the military left, the night riders began. Everything changed. What we gained, we lost. Many people died. We lost the right to vote. There were no more decent schools, decent jobs, or decent pay. By the late 1870s, it was intolerable. Our parents decided it was time to leave, but our former owner tried to make us feel guilty for leaving his family. He made sure we'd be leaving without having any money. It took us at least 2 years to travel from Tennessee to Wisconsin, maybe more. We had to stop along the way to rest and find work. Winters really slowed us down too, so we had to wait until weather got warmer so we could travel. Unfortunately, we didn't all make it to Wisconsin together. Our stepmother, Joanna Jones, died along the way. The journey was just too long and hard for her. We were very sad we had to leave her behind. What else could we do? We arrived in Cheyenne Valley around 1877. There were other Black families who settled here earlier. We earned enough money so Edmund could buy the first 48 acres of his farm in Forest Township. This happened in 1879. With help from our neighbors, we were able to build our house and barn on the land. It was a great beginning. Edmund was a proud man as he walked on his land, but he didn't live very long afterwards. He died in 1881. After only 2 years on the farm, he had willed the farm to his only natural-born child, Mary, but she almost lost the farm because it was heavy in debt, and also because of Edmund's first family, You see, when Edmund's farm was put into probate, the children from his first marriage tried to lay claim to the farm and sent a representative from Kentucky to act on their behalf. This was the first we'd ever heard of these children. Thankfully, the courts ruled in Mary's favor, and she was able to keep the farm. I had paid the debt that was owed, which allowed the farm to stay in our family. At the time, Ashley, Mary, and I were young adults living on the farm together. We didn't have a reason to leave yet, but that changed. Ashley was the first to leave the farm in 1882. That's when he got married to Rebecca Bass. They were also the first to leave the farm and move to Crosse. Ashley became an apprentice of the Moss barber shop. I married Millie Rebels the same year. We stayed on the farm with my sister Mary until she moved to Minneapolis and found work. Millie and I remained on the farm, which eventually grew to 250 acres. We had 6 children. Our last 2 were twins, but one of the twins, Minnie, died shortly after birth in 1895. Her death was devastating to us. It almost destroyed our family. It had a profound effect on Millie. I love my wife. Millie and I were married for better or worse until death parted us. But she went into severe melancholy after Minnie's death. Even though Marvin, the other twin, survived, that wasn't enough to comfort Millie's grief with the loss of our daughter. We wanted to help her with the overwhelming grief she felt, but we didn't know how. So we thought it best to put her in a hospital. We brought her to the Vernon County home. It was a hospital and farm. We visited Millie often over the years. Unfortunately, the Millie we knew, with the glow in her eyes, never returned home.
Dad was a good husband to our mother during this time. With Mom remaining in the hospital, Dad was left to be a single father. We all learned to cook and bake, and of course, we needed to be able to handle the wood burning cook stove without burning ourselves. If one of us was too short to stir the soup pot or stew, we stood on a chair next to the stove. The back of the chair protected us from the heated stove, and after a while, the chair had scorch marks where the back touched the stove. It's a miracle that we were never seriously injured. Anyone who knows anything about farming knows children grow up fast. Farm children often work like hired hands while they still need britches. It's not that there isn't any playtime. It's just not a priority on the farm. I think because of the nature of the farm labor, Algie became very ingenious on the farm. She watched Dad as he built a large frame house to replace the log cabin constructed by Grandpa Edmund. Dad figured out what was necessary to bring running water into the house from a hillside spring. We were there first to have running water in our home and indoor plumbing. Can you imagine? Running water and indoor plumbing. What was he gonna think of next? A water heater? That would have been nice. These were the significant accomplishments before 1919. Dad was the kind of farmer who read all the farm books and magazines that you could find. He was the first to have a tractor in Cheyenne Valley. And he understood many of the latest trends in farming. Farmers and counter farms, agents came from miles around to talk with my father about farm news, seeds, germination, and breeding. That was a very well-regarded man to everyone because he was very well-read. I was proud of him. And as for my brother Elta, he built most of the ground barns in southwestern Wisconsin. These barns allowed for more efficient use, of the farmer's time and energy. The silo was in the center of the barn and the cows faced the silo in the center. It made much more sense with having the silo outside the barn and having a straight row of cows and stanchions. Yes, sir, my father and brother were like 2 peas in a pod when it came to farming. My father was a very religious man and a learned one also. He stressed the importance of us getting an education, and after World War I, my brothers Herbert and Elda attended George R. Smith College, which was historically Black college in Sedalia, Missouri. Herbert became an engineer in Rockland, Illinois, and Marvin eventually moved to California, and he started a very successful business there. Elda and I ran the farm with our father. We also constructed about 15 brown barns in southwestern Wisconsin, and Elda was the contractor and developed the design. As children, my father had us read the Bible in the evening. He also said,
Read a little from the Bible every day. I want to live in a way that is acceptable to the Lord. It's my desire to be acceptable. The Bible is the only guide folks have. You, I, or anyone else.
with my father, religion was not just a cloak to be worn on Sunday mornings. It was a lifetime garment, reassuring in times of difficulty and comforting in times of happiness. I was a Buffalo soldier in World War I. Our regiment borrowed the name from the Black Cavalry units formed during the Civil War. I'm proud of my service in the 183rd Infantry Brigade of 365th Regiment. My community and my family, they thank me for my service. But did my country? World War I started in 1914, but the United States didn't get involved until 1917. At the time, the US military was segregated. We ate, slept, billeted, and took our ranks as separate orders. It was hard to know who the enemy was because the British and the American soldiers refused to fight alongside African Americans. But the French welcomed the Buffalo soldiers. The 183rd Infantry Brigade fought in the Milwaukee battle. It was the costliest conflict in the American history. 1.7 million soldiers fought for 47 days until it finally ended on November 11, 1919, Armistice Day. Soldiers who returned home promised never to speak of the horrors of that war. These memories were hidden away like our uniforms in closets.
I love this kitchen. This is my mom's kitchen. She loved this place and we loved seeing her here. When Herbert and I were in school, the morning was full of the smell of coffee, fresh biscuits, and a side pork frying in the pan. We'd hear Dad and the hired man clicking shot cans of milk as they came through the front door. Those sounds and smells were our alarm clock. Lunch at school was another biscuit with leftover meat and a pint jar of milk. We'd run home after school to the smell of fresh baked bread or a cake or cookies. Mom was a great baker. Before chores, we would each get a large slice of fresh bread slathered with churned butter, and off we went to feed chickens and calves. When we came in from chores, the kitchen was filled with the warmth of my mother, surrounded by the aroma of her supper. We loved this kitchen. But everything changed the summer of 1895. Marvin and me. Suddenly, the kitchen was cold, empty. Dad greeted us in the morning, but there were no biscuits for breakfast. Marvin was fine, but the hushed tones in the kitchen told us that Mitty wasn't doing so well. Auntie came to take care of Mama, Marvin, and me. Papa's face told us to be quiet. He died a month after she was born. And that was the beginning of Mom's downward spiral. That was the beginning of me losing my mother. The look of sorrow on her face stays with me. All of us had to grow up very quickly to help Dad with Marvin. I couldn't help but wonder how different things might have been if only my sister had lived. The winter of 1895 was cold. Our hearts were heavy. Then one day, the following spring, Father coaxed Mother out of her bedroom and downstairs. Morning sunlight came in the kitchen windows. There was promise in our small world. We hurried off to school full of hope, but hope only lasted for a little while. This went on for years. For a few weeks, days floated by like a top twirling and wobbling, but finally the top fell on its side and there's nothing we could do. Mom closed herself off again. Dad paced the kitchen. Mom's sisters came. Soft discussions were heard. Then in 1907, Dad gathered Mother up and they drove away in the truck. We love this kitchen. This is the place where our mother was strong and beautiful. This is where she could love us. This is where she'll always be remembered. She passed away in 1940 at the age of 74. But I will remember her in this kitchen, for she was truly our mom.
I was asked frequently to come to this one of the local schools and tell the kids about the round barns and how they were built. There were several integrated schools in the area. The one I happened to visit on this occasion was the Eastman School. This brought back many memories of my time in school here in the valley. I remember that I was a lot like the kid who the teacher always had to hold to throw away his candy in the trash. See, life on the farm was pretty hard, and school seemed to be the only place that I could have some fun. Most of the times, though, I just got myself into trouble. I usually start my presentation by asking the kids how many of them had seen any of the rubber barns that my men had built. And if I asked if any had been inside of them, I'd get fewer responses. There'd always be one, though. This time, the kid's name was Simon. He heard from his father and his uncle comparing their barns to our round barns. His dad liked the way that hay wagon could be pulled up into the haymow to be unloaded. That was very convenient. You didn't have to push the hay up on the side of the barn and drive out the rooms. And Simon, remember to tell your parents that the trees for the barn need to be dry 2 years before the barn is built. And does anyone know why? Because wood shrinks as it dries. If you build with new wood, the joints could separate and the beams could split. The sidings could develop openings between boards. All the shrinking should be done before the barn is built. Here, let me show you how a round barn is constructed. See on the part of this drawing here? That looks like a drawbridge on a castle. This is what Simon was talking about. This bridge is unfinished, but it goes all the way down to the ground. And the hay wagon is pulled by the horse right up to the top, to the hay wall. The horse and wagon travels around the inside of the barn and comes back out the back when it's unloaded. What else do you notice about this drawing?
The silo is in the center of the barn.
Exactly. As farmers, we all know how important silos are to animals in the winter. It's where their food is stored. So why do you think the silo in this drawing is in the center of the barn instead of the outside? In this drawing, you see the barn opening up like slices of an oval. And yet, in each of these areas, and how can insurance stand? Most cows like to go to the same stanchion every day. It's a good thing the cow's head is placed in the stanchions while you're being milked. Otherwise, they'd be walking around, you'd have to follow them with a pail. And that's not something I want to do.
Me neither.
Once the cows are all in their stanchions, they're all facing the silo. He's got from the silo or the hayloft into the center, and it's much easier to feed the cows in a circle. When it comes time for milking, there's more room between each cow because they're spread out. If they were all in a straight line, you'd have the cows betsing on a rope and telling them, move over. She'd move over, but sometimes the cow expert might not like to move around. And while milking, the tussle about who owns the space begins. Hopefully the milk doesn't end up on the floor. It also works out nicely when the cows stay in the barn for the winter. That happens alone big strong barns that they have more room to lay down and they're not as likely to step on each other. Then there'd always be that little buddy guy that always asks about the circle on the marked drop.
What does it not mean? I can't say that. Farmers, I'm sure you know exactly what that is.
What goes in the front of the cow comes out the back end, and what comes out the back lands in the gutter.
Thank you, Mr. Shivers. Class, wasn't he a great guest?
Yes, sir, I enjoyed those visits. Teachers at the Eastman School, the Salem School, and Mount Ever would have me talk to their students a lot. They all knew about farming, just not a lot about the round barns I constructed. My father, Thomas Shivers, was a very progressive farmer. I learned a lot from him and used what he taught me to learn more about the round barns I built in the community.
After retiring from farming, Thomas moved to Los Angeles to live with his son Marvin. Marvin had become the owner and printer of Shivers Quality Printing Company in Los Angeles. Thomas died there in 1978 at the age of 101. Marvin moved to Paris, California, where he passed away in 1978 at the age of 84. Cora lived most of her life in Minneapolis. She married twice and had one child named Gilbert. Mary, Thomas's sister, also lived in Minneapolis. Thomas's eldest son, Herbert, had been an engineer at the John T. LaFarge Tanning Company in Rockland, Illinois. When the company disbanded, he also moved to California with his wife, Iva Bath Shivers, and spent the rest of his life there. Edgar lived his entire life on the farm, built by his grandfather, Edmund Harris, and his father, Thomas Shivers. Edgar never married. He died suddenly in November of 1940 at the age of 49. Belgia was the most progressive farmer in the valley. He was born in 1889 in Cheyenne Valley. At the age of 30, he made Vernon County the round barn capital of the world by designing and helping in the construction of at least 15 round barns in the area. He married his wife, Flora Rebels Walden, in 1945. Belgia died in 1978 and Flora in 1980. They are buried in the Forestburg Cemetery. Belgia and Flora never had any children, but they took part in the upbringing of many children in the valley. There are many people in Cheyenne Valley that affectionately call them Grandma and Grandpa.
That was a challenging video, especially that school scene. The school scene was done at Smith Valley School in La Crosse. It's a historic school museum. We were very fortunate to be allowed access to the school for this. One teacher from, I think it's Hamilton Sosa School in La Crosse volunteered half of this, well, with their parents' consent, volunteered half of this class to take part in the school sequence. And I don't know if Algie Shivers ever did any, Barb, do you know if he ever didn't do any lecturing in any schools?
Not that I know.
But this was just a nice, concise way to get the information about round barns
to us and use a setting, a school setting for it. So now that is Michelle Shivers on the left. Now Michelle Shivers, excuse me, on the left. She is a descendant from Marvin. Remember the twins that Mitty had, the one baby died, Marvin lived, and Marvin eventually moved to California, and Thomas lived with Marvin, and Michelle is a descendant from Marvin. So I'm Michelle.
Are you ready for me now?
Sure.
You have to excuse me because I am working still, so I'm multitasking. So that's why I have to. I am Michelle Shivers, and I'll start out with explaining my name. Marvin Shivers never married my grandmother, Bernetta Kaysen. So my father was born on his birth certificate. He was born as Marvin Kaysen. And so his high school records said Shivers with the C in it. His military records said that as well. So I'm not sure if during those years they didn't allow you to take your parents' name because you weren't married in St. Paul, Minnesota. But I'm gonna start with just some things about Marvin Shivers. You talked about how he had a print shop, and he was one of the most successful. He was really the most Black successful printer shop that they had in Los Angeles, and he did end up having ink poisoning, which was what really ended his career in that. So that was very interesting for me to know, and I'm interested in finding out what was in the ink then, which would have caused that. But he did end up getting having that, and then of course he was highly respected in the AME Church in Los Angeles, and so then to kind.
Michelle. Oh, Michelle, we can't hear you. Michelle.
Must have frozen a little bit.
Because he never divorced the woman before that. So that's always a point of contention for me that I think is a very interesting fact. And then there's another line of cousins that live in New York from Thomas Shivers. And I don't have that information written down, but there's at least known 3 suspected family lines. One is a possible, unable to confirm. Can you hear me okay? Because I see you looking around, Maggie. I'm not sure.
Now we can. Michelle. Michelle.
Yes.
Can you hear us okay right now?
Yes.
All right. It was just going in and out, so we missed a little section.
Do you know when Marvin left Cheyenne Valley by any chance?
I have that information in those dates, but I really wasn't able to really put it all together correctly. But what I do know is that when he left, he went to Minnesota, and there were the Ashley's relatives, the Zeta and Zelly.
Okay.
If you can't hear me, just start waving, and then I'll know.
Okay, will do.
Michelle, I have a question for you. I don't think she heard me.
She might be a little frozen again. Sorry, everybody. Gonna blast your eardrums out.
If you keep having trouble hearing me, then what I'll do is I'll put you on mute, and then I'll put this on mute, and then I'll pick up on my cell phone and see if log in on my cell phone to see if that makes it any better so you can hear me.
Okay.
Do I need to do that? Try to go on my cell phone?
Probably. Why don't we try that just so that we get it?
Barbara wants to can give us some historical perspectives about Cheyenne Valley itself.
Yeah.
I would like to finish telling you what I want to tell you because I'm on work hours.
Go ahead.
No, I'm on work hours and I don't want to get disconnected. So that's the only problem because while I have
Hold
Now, let
on.
me get out of here. While I have my, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to, if I get an urgent call, because I am in clinic, if I get an urgent call, I'll have to go.
Yeah.
But hopefully you can hear me pretty good now. But I said that an interesting fact is everybody talks about Marvin Shivers being married to Thelma Shivers, whose last name is Lady. But an interesting fact that I have on that is that they really never did get married because he never divorced the woman before that. So I thought that was just a very interesting fact that back then, you know, the records didn't carry and it just wasn't like it is now. You just can't do that. But what I found from his line is that he had two sets of confirmed families, and then he had a third set that was questionable, and not sure if that was his child or not. But that other family line is from New York, and that's I can't think of his name, but we've been in contact, and his grandfather was Thomas Shivers as well. So so far there's two confirmed lines that come from him, and I thought that was interesting because I always grew up saying, you know, my little direct family line is kind of small with, you know, those that survived. So I was really happy to be able to meet the Shivers line descendant that lives in New York, and he's older than me, so he can remember more about my grandfather than I can, because I was only about, I think I was maybe 6 or 7 years old when he died. But we used to go and visit him in Paris, California, and he had a lot of land. It was just like a dust bowl to me. And he had a dog named Blackie, and I remember the dog because I'll just tell you, Thelma just didn't like us. I don't know if she didn't like us or not, but as a kid, that's how I perceived it. But so when we'd go visit her, she'd give us something to eat. And if we didn't like it, like if she gave it to her for breakfast, she'd give it to us for lunch. So I was like really frustrated and just very, you know, little kid. I was very frustrated. So I thought, how am I going to ever survive this? Because my grandfather's wife just doesn't like me or whatever. And so what I realized was my brother, he got a different meal. And I'm like, how did he get a different meal? What I found out is that he figured out how to put his plate under the table and feed the food to the dog. So, that was what happened. But now I talked to Dolores Shivers, who was older. She's in her 80s and she knew Thelma and she didn't dislike her, and she used to go visit her and they were friends. But, when you're a child, sometimes your perspective, if you really don't know a person well and you don't see them well, you feel like they don't like you, but they might love you. But maybe you just don't want to eat your vegetables. So that might, I don't really know. But that's just my story that I have for her. And now my father, he died in 2014, and he was really estranged from his father. And so when he came to San Francisco in the Navy, he was in the military, and he was an architect. I have some more sheet on the paper that my mother told me, but my paper is not organized, so I can't really regurgitate it. But so once my mother found out that he really didn't know his father, then my mother just went into motion and got them together, and that's how we all ended up meeting. That's how we all ended up meeting our grandfather. So so that was just very interesting on her part. And my mom, of course, my father, he was a jazz guitarist. He loved music. He was, I guess, architect, drafting was his thing. He was he worked on computers. He did a lot of things. Like, he was very good at computers and stuff. He loved racing cars. He was a member of the Sports Car Club and the Corvette Car of America. My mom said he just drank too much. And I'm just going to be quite frank with you. They did get divorced. She said he liked to look at those nasty Playboy magazines.
So, Mama was like, she just couldn't stand it. So he loved certain groups, like if you're a jazz fan, he liked Wes Montgomery, James Brown in San Francisco. My mother was born and raised there. They used to hang out in the Fillmore district. They went to see the Beatles. They saw Janis Joplin. They used to put us on top of speakers and stuff, and on top of the fireplace when we were kids to dance to Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix. I came from a music loving family, and there was a lot of good younger childhood memories. Now, if I'm going too long, just stop me.
I have a question for you, Michelle.
Yes.
I wonder, the records I have is Rebecca Ann Peter Shivers and her daughter Nettie went out to Los Angeles, and they both died there. Were they there with the rest of the Shivers family, I wonder?
Now, there's another line of the family, which is the Brown side of the family, which married to the Ashley Shivers side of the family. And there was a lot of connection with those families there is, I didn't get a chance to really dig into it, but I did meet the mother, the Brown descendant, and I went to the mother's house more than once, and she has a lot of information and knowledge. And her house was a house where those relatives came to a lot. So that's the information with her, and I believe that she's still living. She gave me a lot of information and documents, but I've never really ciphered through them to get a lot. But she had a lot of pictures and things of the Shivers family and the people that would come to visit. So there was a lot of activity from them, but it seemed like there was a lot that went on with the Browns. But now I didn't find their grades there, so that's something that would have to look at to see. But I do know that from Minnesota and even from Wisconsin that the Brown family had a connection, and they spent a lot of time there in California there.
Yeah, I think that's Nettie.
Yeah, that's Nettie. I know
Right.
that's Nettie. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Wonderful question. I'm going to hand it back over here to Denise real quick.
I wanted to get some information from Barb about Cheyenne Valley, because it all started in this area. And I was curious to know about what life was like in Cheyenne Valley itself, and especially the history of Cheyenne Valley as it is being included in the Hillsboro School District. I think you had said that local history is this local history is included in their schools also, and you've done some presentations about that.
Yes, as it said, grandma, little Florrie was my grandma and Algie. We called them Grandma and Algie, and they had no children of their own, but they raised kids who had lost their parents, my grandmother on my mother's side and her mother. And we spent a lot of time down there. My mother and father got divorced. And so we spent a lot of time at Grandma and Algie's, and that was on the farm where you seen the big pine tree, and we had a big swing in that tree, and Algie was just like anybody else. He would help you if you were in trouble. He helped our family many times. He never came to our house without bringing a little box of groceries. And of course, when we walked in the door at their house, we had to eat. And their favorites was fried potatoes or noodles, always chicken. And I remember about 8 years old, Algie was still milking in his barn. And I went down there one morning to help him. And of course, I didn't know much about cows at that point. And he had me put a milker on because Algie had a vacuum line already. And being progressive as he was, he had a setup like that, so I was putting the milker on the cow, and I don't think she intended to kick me, but she brought her leg up and hit me right in the nose. And I run to the house with a bloody nose and cried to grandma, and oh my gosh, she chewed Algie out. She said, they're not supposed to be helping you do that. She said, they're too young, but that didn't stop Algie, because I remember driving tractor for him in haying season and everything like that, so.
Just so that you know, all of those pictures, I think Barbara was the one that took us on a tour, myself and Rebecca, the historian, and our videographer, and she took us on a tour. There's actually a Cheyenne Valley tour, and I got this pamphlet at the library. I mean, not the library, City Hall. No, the Historic Society, Vernon Historical Society. That's in the parking lot of the hospital.
Yep.
And we drove out to Hillsboro, and Barb, we showed Barbara the map and said, show us where Algie's farm was, and Tom Shivers' farm, and some of the round barns. So do you still do the tours of?
We do, and I've found we wanted to do bigger tours, but the school buses wouldn't do it for us because of liability issues. But I did find a bus service locally that is willing to do it for us. And we're looking into having 2 this year.
2 school bus tours?
Well, they're not school buses, but they seat probably 40, 45 people and going on the round barn tours.
Wonderful.
Now there's 2 there. I mean, there's a regular Cheyenne Valley tour, and then there's an extended one that includes some extra round barns that aren't on the Cheyenne Valley tour.
There's also a historic marker that is a testament to African-American settlers in Cheyenne Valley. If you go down 133, is it?
33.
33. If you go, so some of you know where it is. That's great. But the first time I saw that historic marker, it was very eye-opening. So this is the tour, and Barb has been our tour guide a lot. And this is the book, another book about the round barns that was available at the Vernon Historical Society. And there are stories in here about Thomas and Algie Shivers, and Flora's mentioned, and some of the others. But there were other Black families like the Basses and Roberts, and you saw Forest Cemetery in there several times, and most of them are resting eternally there. But I was fortunate enough to see the grave sites of Micaiah and Mourning Rebels, the settlers. I mean, that cemetery is kind, well, you have to hike a little ways to get there, but just seeing those stones there makes it real. They were really, really there, and that's their final, seeing the stones from Micaiah and Mourning Rebels.
Micaiah was one of the original settlers, and Cheyenne Valley was originally called Rebels Valley.
Yeah.
Because he had 12, 14 children, and most of them settled there eventually before it got too crowded, and then intermingled with the European Americans and African Americans and Native Americans.
I mean, you can see, I mean, there is the difference in hue of some of the, I mean, you go to some of these reunions, and you'll see someone in a dashiki and someone blonde and blue haired, and to see the 2 of them together, yeah, our grandfathers were brothers. So it was a very unique setting. And then I just wanted you to get a flavor for what some of the descendants were like, as you heard from Michelle and Rebecca.
telling their stories about some of the descendants, but it all started here. And so it was important to bring.
Pictures of it. There you are. So is that your Aunt Charlotte? That's my grandma?
Yeah,
That's my grandma.
great.
That's your grandma?
Yeah, that's my dad's mom.
Okay,
Oh, there you go.
surprise. Michelle and Rebecca, are you still with us?
Roberta.
There's a lot of them.
It's
Yeah.
Roberta, but yes, I am.
Sorry about
I'm
that.
still with you. I
Michelle?
do have some pictures of Alga's farm. My dad took us there. I'm guessing it was in the 70s. And I have pictures of the house and pictures of where the stream came in, where my dad said they kept the butter and where the thing came through. So if someone would like some copies of those, I do have pictures of the farm, and I'm guessing they were from the 70s.
Pictures.
Would it be possible to email to Maggie, and maybe we could get them to family members if you'd be willing to do that?
I've lots of pictures. I've been working on the family history. I have lots of pictures of Ashley and Nettie, and like I said, the most recent ones though were taken, I think, in the 70s before the house burned down. But yes, if you'll just give me the information, I can make copies and send them.
And Roberta, for myself, I'm willing to pay you for you to send me the copies if there's any cost involved. So I want copies.
Is that Michelle?
Yeah, that's Michelle.
Okay, just wanted to
All
make
right.
sure.
One of the guests here says that she thinks that the historical society
Absolutely,
might
we'd be
have,
really excited for that. for some of their
might be
photos as well.
interested in having those pictures to put in their historic society.
Okay, it'll take me a while to dig them out, but I'll see what I can find. I know they're somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not from the.
No,
historical
behind
society,
you.
But I'm also a descendant.
Yeah.
I'm a descendant of Micaiah and
Morning Rebels, okay.
And my great aunt was Flora.
Oh, okay.
And there is a Micaiah and Morning Rebels Facebook page where lots and lots of pictures have been pasted, and I follow that pretty religiously and save everything to a folder so that I can see them, but that's an easy, upload to a Facebook page and things like that. So,
Do you live around here?
I do. I don't live in Hillsboro. I live about 20 minutes away.
From Hillsboro?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice, well, wonderful.
Just a different ridge.
Lots of them.
Yes.
Can you just, when you have your tours,
Yes.
When you put them on, we put them on Facebook and report.
Yes, they'll be for my face.
I'd
Will there
like-
be one during the picnic this year? Or the reunion?
That, I'd like to mention that we have a Cheyenne Settlers Heritage Society organization. It was set up in 1999. We had a city administrator at that time named Ed Emerson, who thought it was just a wonderful story and needed to be told. So he got a bunch of us together and we set up a committee and got it, all the legal stuff done, and we've been going since 2000. And we have as a result of, it's called Effie's Diary. Effie was the youngest daughter of Micaiah Rebels. And she mentioned in there, as did Grandma, that they had a big church picnic every year towards the fall. And people from Minneapolis and Chicago and all over would come. And I mean, they had hundreds of people that returned for this picnic. And as a result of that, we decided to have a reunion every other year. We started out every other year. And it is now every year prior to the COVID. And this will be our first year since the COVID. Since the COVID started. And we are also, it's not just a reunion this year. Our reunions usually consist of, we have some historical speakers and we have some fundraising things going on, and we have
Your auctions.
an auction, and then we have a dish to pass. Everybody brings a dish to pass. The Settlers Society provides, you know, meat and stuff, and so we get a wide variety of food. And it's interesting to see, well, it's July, the third weekend in July, third Saturday. Yes, it's at the Fireman's Park. But we are also having a big fundraiser at the same time. It's not just a reunion, and it's open to the public because we have a gazebo project in the works. We are building a round barn gazebo in our Cheyenne Settlers Park in Hillsboro, where the historical marker is. And we have all the engineering and all of that's already finished. And we had everything ready to go before COVID. And now, since COVID hit, our lumber prices have doubled. And so we have to go back to raising more funds. We have had $10,000 committed by the city and $10,000 by the Vernon County
Historical Society.
Not Historical Society, the tourism. So we have 20,000 sitting there, which has been sitting there for 3 or 4 years now. And but with the prices of everything that's went up, we have to raise more money.
What about local?
Well, about $15,000 away, so.
What about local history? I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that the Hillsboro School District has included Cheyenne Valley history in their curriculum. And we're trying to get some of the Crosse people influxed into La Crosse School District, Onalaska, West Salem, all of those surrounding school districts. What does the Hillsboro School District do regarding the local history of Cheyenne Valley?
Well, since we've gotten together, we have had a songwriter, and we went into the schools, and I think it was the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at that time. And he helped the kids come up with songs about Cheyenne Valley and some little skits, and then we had a performance night. And that was probably around the mid of 2005, 2006. But since then, in the 4th grade, they have a Cheyenne Valley section in their history that I've been going in and talking to the kids, and the round barns are real interested in what the schools were like then and stuff like that. So we have a presentation every year before the COVID.
So this is the elementary schools that.
Elementary, 4th grade, yes.
Okay. It would be nice if maybe other school districts in the area might find this local history, find a place for this local history in their school curriculum so that the knowledge is passed down. Because I notice at some of those picnics, the people are our age, there aren't a whole lot of young people there, and we're getting older. And someone has to pass the baton, and school is where you pass the baton. It's an important history. Cheyenne Valley it was ahead of its time. They had integration at a time when, if it was done in Alabama, you'd get lynched. So
the Eastman School that it showed there was the first integrated school in the state that it was down by Valley.
That one is caved in, though, right?
That one's gone. Actually, the Historical Society.
What's at the, what about the
Eastman School?
Okay.
Had bought the building, they were going to move it and never got it done before it just collapsed. But there was the Eastman School, the Salem School, Gilly School.
And they're all on the tour, at least where they were is on the tour.
There are some buildings, a few left, but Fairview was kind of the Robert settlement that was over by Mount Tabor.
But I find pictures like this is the Mount Tabor ball team in 1911. And it's integrated. I mean,
My great uncle, Uncle Burley. My Uncle Burley, I have to dig here, I'm not
But
sure.
Algie and his brothers are all in.
Well, see, every rebels in here would be a cousin.
but I mean, 1911, and then you look at stories like Roots, where, you know, it would, that's unthinkable
Yeah.
in Tennessee.
This, I think, is my great uncle.
Okay. Bottom left, but you'll see the Shivers kids are in here also. So if you get a chance, maybe, I think the historic, Vernon Historical Society.
I'm gonna have to go. I'm watching my grandson and he's gonna be coming home on the bus soon. So what I'd like to do is, if any of you want those pictures, if you would email me, and my email address is my name really, rmmecum@wisc.edu.
Rebecca, I'll post it in the chat for you.
Okay, I was just gonna ask that. Wonderful.
I'll
Thank you.
post it for her. I'll post
Did you
it in
get
the chat.
that?
I'll post it in the chat for you, Rebecca.
Okay, Roberta.
Okay, Roberta, I'm
Rebecca was
sorry.
my great grandma.
I know, but I'm my brain slipped, but I will post it in the chat for them.
Okay, just long as you
Okay.
got it. So when I find out how many people want pictures, I'll go and make them at Walgreens.
Yeah, I'll post it in there.
Nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
I'll post it as soon as this phone call stops ringing on my phone.
Okay.
Ringing.
Bye,
Okay.
Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.
I get so confused. There it is.
Okay, we were, the Enduring Families Project was, took on this bold endeavor of finding performers in the area who would take part in this. And we were fortunate enough to get people to be in these. If you'll bring back up our webpage with the list of the videos on there.
You want me to pull up the webpage?
But she's still on Zoom, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's good.
No, I was wondering if you could pull up the
Yep.
Crosse County Historical Society that has all of the videos on there.
Don't you worry.
The reason, okay, if you could scroll down, okay. So yours truly was Lillian Davenport, and Dodie was Berletta Walden Loving. And what I did not realize at first was that Berletta Walden Loving and Ellen Shivers, who you saw, were sisters. Ellen Walden Shivers and Berletta Walden Loving were sisters. And there was another sister, Emma Walden Moss. So these were Walden sisters that married Mosses, Lovings, but you know, they're all kind of intertwingled, just like you heard about Rebecca, now that Bass, I didn't know that was a married name, but there were other Basses. You know, family branches are kind of complicated, but that's the project that we took on, and it was just really important to tell this story. Dodie is back. Do you have anything to just say a word or two about the project? And
yeah, I mean, I think it's really fascinating, really wonderful to see more extensive photographs, because I think we didn't have as many when we first started putting that together. Because Berletta was her grandparents were Micaiah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
But there's no
and then-
pictures of,
But yeah, we still don't have any pictures.
there's different, I mean, we were lucky enough to get pictures of Minnie, Tom Shivers' wife, but that was later, but there's no pictures of Berletta, there's no pictures. We got a picture of Ellen Shivers.
But does anybody confirm that picture? Because now that picture that they say is Minnie, what I heard, what I saw them chatting, saying that they weren't sure, some of those pictures, they weren't sure if it was really her or not. So is there a confirmation on that picture for Minnie?
Minnie Thomas Shivers' wife you're talking about, the one that.
Yes, because I've seen them talking about that, saying that they're not sure whether that's really her picture. Because that's the picture I have, but I don't,
According to our historian, I can only go by what Rebecca said. And she said it's Minnie, so.
Okay, I didn't hear her, I'm sorry.
But Michelle, Marvin, what was the girl's name that died? Minnie or? Minnie with a D. But the mother was Minnie with an N. Okay.
Minnie and Mitty. Got it.
Yeah, that's right. But I want to tell you something that I just want to say this, because for where Thomas Shivers came from, it does, like, in modern day perspective, it's not correct anymore. And I just want to put it on the record, because as people look back in history, they need to be able to see the past and the current. So Haywood County where they were from was in existence between 1823 and 24. And then they later reduced the size and they divided that area into Crockett County and Lauderdale counties. And when you read the things that Thomas Shivers actually told out of his own mouth when he was interviewed, he never mentioned Haywood County, because Haywood County, it was changed. And all he ever said was he was born near the Alamo. And that was on purpose, because the counties had changed. The county seats have changed. So the closest county in modern day that's closest to where he's from is Crockett County, which of course, the Alamo, Crockett County. So the prior was Haywood. And so the more modern closest area after it was divided would be now Crockett County, which is only about an hour and 15 minutes away from where I live. And I've been there several times.
Yeah, they mentioned in the beginning of both Ashley and Thomas Shivers that they were born in Crockett County, Tennessee, I believe. So
a lot of people, I just mentioned it because even like I heard some presentations and people speak, and they said that, they came from Haywood County. And sometimes when we're doing all this history to record it for future generations as well. And it will help people if people begin to reference it that way, because when, younger people or future generations decide to look, they'll be able to look on the map and say, oh, well, that's where, because Haywood is mentioned so much. So I'm sure all you guys are very historical people, you probably know, but I just hear it different times, called different things. So.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording of the Zoom just because we've got our after school program here. So it's going to get a little loud. So thanks everybody for watching.